Welcome to the Automation Unplugged podcast, the podcast for technology professionals, featuring leading industry personalities. I'm your host, Ron Callis.
Let's get started.
Hello there, Ron Callis with another episode of Automation Unplugged. I'm happy to be here with all of you. Maybe you're watching on Wednesday, the day we release new shows, or maybe you're listening, or maybe you're watching at another time. I appreciate you tuning in. Got another great guest. And today it's actually a returning guest. And I've known this person for well over 20 years, probably close to 25 years at this point. And he's a legend in himself in many regards. So yes, he participates and has been a big player in the world of custom electronics and automation. But this person has many different facets to their abilities and skill sets. And I'm excited to bring him back on the show. So today I'm excited to present you with David Frangioni. David is the CEO of Modern Drummer Magazine. So any of our musicians out there, I'm sure you know that publication. I believe David will tell us more, but I believe it's the biggest publication for drumming and music in the world. And Frangioni Media, another one of his businesses, and All Access IDA. So David is, I don't know, what do you call a man of many talents and many facets? You're about to meet him and you'll learn for yourself. So let's go ahead and bring David in and get the interview started. David, my friend, how are you, sir?
Great to see you, Ron. Great to see you. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, I'm looking at the room you're in, David, and there's a knight over your right shoulder, and there's a castle-like heading over this window. Where are you at?
I'm at a rock star, close friend, collaborator of mine's home, and we are working together today. And it was scheduled after you and I scheduled our time,
Yeah.
and he couldn't move the time and day because of his schedule, and I didn't want to move our podcast because we were planning on this for a few weeks. So I'm squeezing it into in between this collab. So as soon as we finish, I'm on to another collab here at the Knight in Shining Armor's castle.
It's one of the more fun backgrounds for an episode of our podcast. So for our listeners that are maybe on your morning walk or your morning drive to a job site, you'll have to check out the video and check out the scenery behind David.
It kind of tells
David,
it all, right? Another day in the life of David Frangioni. It's all these environments are so unique every day and so unpredictable, really.
I've been I've known you, David, for many years now. I've been friends with you for many years. I'm happy to say that. And I follow you on social media because it's the only way to keep up. You are somewhere in this world on planet Earth in any given week. So maybe just give a big picture. How would you describe if someone says, David, what do you do? How do you answer that?
Yeah, it's a hard one to answer. No, it's a tough one to answer because there's a multiple of answers that would all be accurate. Let me just say first and foremost, I'm just blessed to do what I do and have done it for so long. Everything I do, I'm passionate about. Everything I do it because I love it and it's important to me and I want to contribute at the highest level. And so that's why I think in a simple description, it's really hard to encapsulate because all of the things that I do would not typically be one person. Uh, you know, drummer, musician, producer, engineer, studio builder, designer. All the way through acoustic isolation, etc. That entire lane: home theater, home automation, artist development, record label. There's just so many different aspects to it, but they're all things that I love to do, and they all fit together through my passion and through my vision of how I want to contribute in those lanes. And that's how it all converges.
Maybe we could start with describing how I'm quieting my phone, how you and I first met. So we first met in the early 2000s because you were
Yeah.
the owner and founder of an integration business called Audio One.
Yep. We
And
were around for about 30 years. I sold it in 2018, and it was very successful.
you worked on just so many spectacular projects all over the country. I know because
World.
it all over the world. In the very beginning, I was your Lutron rep, and then I was your Crestron rep, and
That's
then we
right.
worked together at Firefly Design Group, which was my design and engineering business that I had launched,
And
and
we lived in
uh,
the same neighborhood.
we lived in Hollywood, Florida. We were neighbors. Your
Yep.
house was
Yep.
bigger than mine, but we
Yes.
were neighbors.
Yeah, you had
And
better barbecues though.
I did have I do love the grill. That's so true. So maybe just if you could describe what your integration journey was, all the way from, well, what did that look like to launch and build that business? Because you came about integration, even I would say sideways. That became, to my knowledge, because of your studio work. And then you were able to ultimately have an exit, which so many entrepreneurs, dream of having the opportunity to have an
Yeah.
exit.
Yeah,
So can you maybe just fill
yeah,
us
that's
in,
right.
for the
And I'm
audience,
still
help
in it.
them understand that?
I'll take you on the journey. I mean, it's important to say I'm still very much into integration and home theater installation and that passion, because that passion never leaves. The
Yeah,
company changed because, as you
there you go.
said, I exited Audio One. Audio One had just gotten, I don't look, it's all relevant. For me, it had just gotten too big for too long, where I was spending so much time running the company that the things I really loved to do, besides the business side of it, were absent. And so it really only made sense to sell it to someone that they really loved what that company looked like at that point, what it looked like to run every day. It was a very different balance of responsibilities from when we were a little smaller to when we got much bigger. So I really enjoy where I am today, which is I'm kind of controlling the narrative, where I take the projects that I want to take and I work on just enough projects that I can get from them what I like to give the most of, which is really, really successful results, hands-on, close understanding of what the needs of the client and the project are. And none of that is lost in the enormity of all of the business mechanics that are required as your company grows. So that's where we are today. But to answer your question and go back to the beginning, I started as a musician, have always been, always will be. And I got into the technology side of things in the 80s for music technology at first, building recording studios, MIDI systems, keyboard rigs, electronic drum rigs, anything. And I found that I had as much passion for home tech as I did for pro tech. And so I started getting into home theater, and like everything that I do as a business started as a passion. You could call it a hobby, but it would be like a really you know, high octane hobby, because I don't know middle grounds. So if I'm in it, I'm sleeping, eating, breathing it, or I'm not interested in it at all. And my mom and dad used to always say that, like, can you find the middle? And I used to always search for it and look like, well, if they're asking me to find the middle, there must be a good reason to do that. So I would always try to find the middle, but it never worked for me. I just had to be on or off. So I got into home audio. The next thing you know, I have this incredible two-channel system, and I'm swapping out DACs, I'm swapping out interconnect cables, I'm swapping out power sources and all of the different steps within the power signal path, and just really, really getting into it. And so naturally my pro business and where I was making a living would they would intersect. People, clients of mine would say, oh, I love your home audio system, or I want to do this as a playback system. And I had enough experience and knowledge from everything I had done in my own kind of laboratory that I would be able to offer services for that. Same thing happened with home theater. I mean, my first home theater was a 40-inch Mitsubishi TV, which, if you remember at the time, going back to the 80s and 90s, tube TVs maxed out at 40 inches, or you had to go rear pro. And of course, front pro, if you had the room. And so that was like the beginning of my home theater, was like the best tube TV I could fix. I had a very small home, and growing up in Boston, very modest means. So everything was grassroots, and um and that's how that grew. And I'll never forget the first time I discovered Runco, as I was going from this really modest home setup to what was possible with the same content. And that's what blew me away when I saw Runco and Ferrugia, and very, very early days of multi-aspect ratio front projection. What blew me away was, wait a second, this is the same content that I'm working on and that I'm then playing back in my little playback room, which has no theatrical visual whatsoever to it. The audio I was starting to really, improve and use surround sound, which at the time it was Dolby Pro Logic. So we weren't at the point yet in this story I'm sharing where there was discrete digital playback in the home. So this was before Dolby Digital, which then was known as AC3. This is strictly Dolby Pro Logic, but I was really, really passionate about understanding the difference between, digitally decoding, analog decoding, THX processing on top of it. I discovered the Fosgate processor, which is one of the best processors I had ever heard. The Lexicon, of course, the MC1. And so all of this just tech that had so much cross pollination with the professional world. At the time, I'm working on records with Aerosmith and with the New Kids on the Block and this one and that one, and these really great artists. And we're experimenting, and we're learning in the studio, and working on the cutting edge. And then on the home side, I was applying the same approach, and it was just really inspiring.
That's it. Well, just to stay on that theme of home tech, and you're still involved in projects. What's kind of
Yeah.
your point of view on how the technology in the home has evolved? I'll just say over the last 5 or 10 years. What's different today?
The Lots of things. I mean, everything's gotten better, from reliability to the fact that, we're dealing with much more developed products. Of course, it goes without saying the fidelity. I mean, when you look at, 4K. Oh, thank you, my friend. When you look at, 4K playback, and now HDR10, and on flat screens, Dolby Vision, we're just talking about extraordinary fidelity. And that's obviously always going to grow, right? When we look back at the history of all tech, whether it's home, pro, commercial, industrial, whatever it is, it's always, it's always growing, it's always gaining at every point in the process, right? Because you've got the source, and then you've got the playback device, and then you've got everything that could be in between that. And the industry always loves buzzwords: 4K, 8K, 16K. But the fact is that the sources are always going to be what we base everything from, in terms of what's possible, because everything is some derivative of that. Even if we're doubling it to 8K, it's a 4K source. That's really what we have to work with. And then as that improves, everything can improve, you know, down the line. But when I look at today's tech, it just keeps getting better and better. And some of these techs, like the Mad VR, which I'm a huge fan of, the Mad VR
Your
Envy, the
demos are
Mark.
always so fun to see the before and after with Mad VR tech.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
eye-opening.
it is. And I've been involved with Richard and Mad VR since the beginning, and now they're on the Mark II,
Wow.
which is an incredible upgrade to the Mark One. And it's a great example. I'm not just picking one product and one moment in time, because that's, it's not possible to just do that. But I'll just use that as an example, as a sampling, to say these are the milestone moments, some of this tech that evolves, that just kind of brings you back to the beginning. Like, it makes you feel like a kid on Christmas morning opening a gift, like this discovery. Like, all of a sudden, a product like Mad VR, you just have all this new capability, and all this, these tools to just get even more out of the source, more out of the display device. And that's what it's all about. It's all, at the end of the day, coming from my background's making records, making music, um, performing, just art, right? And the performance and creation of that art. That's my core. And so that's all about emotion, right? Even if
Yeah.
you're playing very technical music, it's still there's an emotional component to how it feels and what it does. And all of this tech, whether it's the button you press on a touch panel to make all kinds of events happen reliably and consistently, or it's a movie you watch in a home theater, it all comes down to the same premise, which is emotion. And in order to get that emotion to be captured and repeatedly delivered over and over and over, we have all of this tech and we have integration and we have tools and we have control systems and all of these other things. Uh, but that's really what it comes down to. And the reliability of delivering that emotion is something that's really, really improved. So we've had some really huge sea changes since I started. I'd say I started in earnest with the home side of things in the early 90s, whereas the mid 80s, I was at that same point on the professional, recording side,
Right.
and live side. So it was, there's always been kind of an 8 or 9 year gap between pro and home for me. And they finally kind of caught up when I really, really dived into home in the mid 90s and just went all in. Became ISF certified and Crestron programming certified and all the things that like really stepped up my game, my ability to deliver solutions to clients. So, today it's just more reliable and more, uh, consistent, because that's always been to me one of the things that I didn't like about the home automation world was that there were, the more you customize, the less reliable it was. And the more you were kind of doing like a mad scientist approach to things because the industry just hadn't caught up that you had some of the tools that you needed. So you had to create them. And a lot of guys have done that, and I've done that. And, there's a lot of innovation behind it. But I never thought the innovation was worth replacing reliability. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just didn't have a choice. You know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm talking about. You and I have grown together in this industry, as you said, for 2.5 decades, and we've worked very closely together. And I want to say now, you are a dear friend of mine, and I value all of the friendship and collaboration we've had. And it's given each of us a front row to like the other's experiences. And in that, you know, it's always been a huge letdown when systems are not reliable. So
Yeah.
one of the things we have today in the tool set that's available and the evolution that's occurred since we've started is that, you got some really, really reliable platforms. So now it's on us to just make sure you utilize them, you integrate them optimally, and now the client can just enjoy what they want and get all that emotion that we're talking about from whatever it is they're doing and not have it interrupted by a flaw in the system, because that's what, any kind of issues with systems just ruin the experience that our clients are having, and that's just not an option.
No, I agree. I want to try to get somewhere. So I'm going to share your website real quick, but only because I want to show an image on your one of your websites. I know you have multiple businesses, but let me attempt to see if I can. You know what? I need to pull it back up, but just bear with me here. I promise, folks, the juice is worth the squeeze. There we are. So here's davidfrangioni.com. This is the website here. I'll put it on the screen just across the bottom for people that want to go check it out. And your website's very unique and interesting because you do have such a diverse set of skill sets and services that you provide your diverse customer and clientele. But on this site, here, and I'll pull that ticker off. There's a couple of the faces of your many just really fascinating clientele and friends that I know you work with closely. But one of those was Ozzy, and of course I'm mentioning this with Ozzy. He just passed just in the past week or two, and when I met you. You were in the phase, or I was within a year or two of meeting you, David, where you were in fact uh, on the MTV show And so your face
Yeah,
was on,
the
what was the name of the
Osbournes,
TV show? The
the
Osbournes.
Osbournes. Yeah,
And I remember it. And so I'm about to say something, and I promise I'm not being demeaning to any brand, because I'm going to challenge, it's not the brand's fault very often when technology is poorly deployed or poorly serviced. A lot of times it can be the technologist or the integrator that may or may not do their part to design it properly, install it, program it, service it. But what I remember so vividly was, I think it was on the show where you had opened a closet and outpoured a stack of AMX touch panels that Ozzy had ripped everything out of his house, because I think I'm remembering this correctly. Correct anything I'm saying if it's not correct. And you ultimately, as Audio One, ended up putting in Crestron in the home, and
no,
you
that is correct.
it was number one, as your Crestron guy. I was like, yeah, go Crestron. But I'm not willing to say that that was AMX's fault. But just, you worked closely with Ozzy. That's where I wanted to land the plane. Could you mind sharing maybe any of those experiences and what it was like to be in the house during that time?
It was incredible. First of all, God bless Ozzy. It, he was such an amazing, iconic artist that everybody already knows that. But I just want to say personally that it's a huge loss, and I'm so blessed that I was able to work with him and spend time with him and Sharon and the kids, and be on the show. And it was an incredibly exciting time. And Ozzy's legacy will live on forever. And he's just done so much on so many levels between Black Sabbath and his own career. So I was referred to Ozzy in 2003. Incorrectly, you and I knew each other a few years, and then from Lutron, and as it turned out, an AMX system had been put in his home that the Osbournes was filmed in Beverly Hills, and we did swap it all out for Crestron, because I was a Crestron programmer and I wanted to personally install it and program it. I wanted to be responsible for it myself. And I'm not an AMX programmer. So the Osbournes agreed to switch to Crestron and let me become responsible for it. And at the time, there were those panels called the STX 1500s, I think they were. And
Yep.
then they went to the 1700. Uh, and they were brick-like wireless touch panels. They were very thick. And they were kind of slanted, but they had hard buttons. They had 5 hard buttons on each side. And what was
Yeah.
cool about that is that the hard buttons could be engraved. So one of the things I did is in the bottom right corner of every touch panel around the house, I had it engraved Ozzy. And on the bottom left corner, I had it engraved Sharon. And so every room operated exactly the same, regardless of sources and display. And so he had an album called Just Say Ozzy. So we did a gag on the show because of this panel I designed called saying "Just Press Ozzy," and it was like a gag off the off the album, right? So
Right.
he would press Ozzy, and it would go to the channel he wanted, which was the History Channel. That's what he enjoyed watching. And so turn on the display, go to the History Channel, route the sound, blah blah blah, and then on the screen would be some other functions that he would most often use that were hard coded. And I programmed it myself so that it could not be broken. The things that would happen on his AMX system, would be such that the TV could be the opposite. Like you press on, the TV would go off. You press off, the TV would come on. Like all the typical stuff that you see, like with IR systems that are trying to be really smart with logic, but they're not. They're too easy to get out of sync. So I made it what I called, and I say this now that Ozzy's not with us anymore. I'm really saying this with a tremendous amount of respect and regard and reverence. Is that it was Ozzy proof, so like he
Right.
could never break the system, no matter how many times he pressed it, no matter what source it was on, if the TV was on, if it was off, like no matter what. And so that was a really great accomplishment. And they were really happy because all they wanted to do was use the system. I mean, it's so basic that it's almost comical to say, they want to watch TV and they want to listen to music. I mean, come on. But when, as we know as integrators, when you're in a complex system, when you have speakers and you have all these different things going on with the TV and different sources, and you have different people coming in and out of the home all the time, there's more to it than it seems, right? If you could just pick up a TV remote and press the button and everything happened the way it should, then we wouldn't need integration so often. But it wasn't that simple there. I mean, they had multiple sources, they had a display, they had separate speakers and separate audio system. They had lighting control on it. Like there were different things going on that the integration part was important. And so
Yeah.
as soon as that need was there, now we had to make it so that it was foolproof. And we did.
To transition that for me, David, help me understand or help the audience understand kind of your role. If they go to your website, they're going to see that you've done music production for so many bands. You have so many. I'm going to get all the terminology wrong. So you're going to educate me with the right words, but gold records, platinum records, like you've been a
Right.
producer behind some of the world's biggest musicians. I mean,
Well, I've been a part of the records. I
part
haven't
of the
always
record.
been the producer. But yeah, that's, my background is, music
I
and
mean,
audio.
Bryan Adams, Aerosmith, Sting, Ringo Starr.
Yeah.
I'm gonna date myself. In the '80s, I was a big fan of Paul Abdul. So
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah.
were a
She's great.
fan of
No, those were huge records.
those were huge records.
Yeah.
But so you also now, I mean, again, because I'm always following you on social, I see that even now you're regularly
Oh, I'm
and
working with a lot of artists. That
you're
part of it only grows. It doesn't go away or change for something else. It's all about expansion and evolving. So I don't often replace something. I'll add another layer to it
but
because I get into it for the first place because I love it. So why would I replace it?
you also though are involved, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're involved in some capacity in movie audio production or movie audio editing. I think I've seen you talk about producing videos or movies or even soundtracks for a lot of the new modern audio systems in theaters.
Well,
Is
I'm involved in scoring for um, TV and film, and I'm involved in anything that kind
what
of
about like
crosses
Atmos?
paths.
I
Well,
like
I'm
the
doing a lot of Atmos mixing. Yes, the Atmos mixing is mostly for music. I do
okay.
some for picture, but it's mostly for music. So like Kiss, their 50th anniversary, um, of their first album, I remixed in Atmos.
So what
My
does that
team
mean though?
and me.
I mean, break it down for me. So is that like someone that's watching a video of the performance in a theater or in an Atmos type theater, they could listen to that surround, or is it
Yeah.
audio only without the video would also be mixed in Atmos?
It's either the Kiss. I do both. The Kiss release we're talking about is audio only, so it's the first album remixed into Atmos. So you're in your theater and you have the Blu-ray of it, or you have it streaming from Apple Music, and you have it going, digitally HDMI into an Atmos decoder, and then you hear my Atmos mix. I
Okay.
also have done video projects where you're watching content and it's in Atmos, right? And most of the movies nowadays, right, that whether I worked on them or not, obviously are in Atmos. So that's kind of the standard is immersive audio is the term. Is we went from discrete 5.1 digital to discrete 7.1 digital, which is called True HD in
Mhm.
Dolby's lingo, and then Dolby went to object-based immersive audio, which they call Atmos. So it was Dolby Digital at 5.1, it was Dolby True HD at 7.1, and now it's Dolby True HD with objects, which is all packaged up called Atmos. And in my recording studio, I have Atmos mixing capability. So I have an actual Atmos encoder that my mix being sent to all the speakers. Of course, I have all the speakers in my studio. to send the objects to in the channels, and then they get encoded through this an Atmos encoder, and then they get packaged up and sent to the distributor for the world to hear and decode back into Atmos.
And kind of a nerdy question, is getting it right or not right, is that really based on you? If you're the one doing that encoding, it's David Frangioni's ear that's determining what the mix for the world to hear is?
Yes. Yeah, the encoding is
That's a
to
lot of
cap.
weight. That's a lot of responsibility, isn't it?
Well, that's the creative process, and everything we do has a lot of responsibility. I mean, you're going to install someone's system where they could be spending hundreds of thousands or millions, and they're trusting that you're going to deliver the goods. That has a lot of responsibility and weight. And
True.
so doesn't, mixing and producing. It's like raising someone's kids, when you take an artist's songs and you're responsible for how they're going to get heard by the world. There's a lot to it, but that's what it is.
One of the facets that I described at the opening of this interview was that uh, number one, you have many facets. One of those facets is this role and responsibility around the Modern Drummer publication. Can
Mhm.
you tell us what it, for anyone that is not informed of Modern Drummer? I'll share the website here while you're talking so people can see what that is. Tell us about Modern Drummer.
Modern Drummer was started in 1977 by Ron Spagnardi, and he really had this brainchild of, let's take the drumming world and start a community and really feature the drummer. Take the drummer from the back of the stage, behind a big kit where nobody knows who he is and what he's doing and how he's approaching his instrument, and let's bring him out front through this magazine, which at the time that was the cutting edge way to reach the community, was through a magazine. And he was really the first on so many levels, the first drum festival, first drum videos, all kinds of things that he did first. And he died in 2003, and his widow was running the company with a team, a great team, for many years, and they just weren't innovating at the level that they needed to, consistent with this brand that was now in dozens and dozens of countries and world famous, and the most revered brand in the drum community, and an important brand. And they just weren't innovating. And they contacted me and asked me if I would be interested in becoming publisher. And this was in 2019. And so I jumped on board as publisher because I was a huge fan of the magazine. I was a subscriber for many years. So I loved the brand. I loved what it stood for. Again, I'm very passionate about it. And so then in 2020, my wife Carolina and I acquired it and went from publisher to CEO. And now we're the steward for, the world's most important drum community.
That's amazing. Is the magazine still printed and published, or is it purely a digital magazine, or is it
It's a
both? Are you
it's a
keeping it
high
digital?
it's both, but the majority of its consumption is digital.
It is.
That's
Is
really
that
how,
just a
yeah,
sign of
it's a
the times?
monthly.
Printed
Totally, yeah.
magazines are less common today in 2025?
Well, absolutely, and for good reason. I mean, they cost so much money to print and mail, and there's so many stories behind it. COVID really was a nail in the printed coffin. And then you had all kinds of shortages result from that. And then now you have tariffs. I mean, it's just been one thing after the other. Whereas digital, we can reliably create and control the path from the team putting together this great magazine every month to the consumer being able to have that on the first of every month. So we're really focused on digital, and we're focused on a lot of other initiatives. It's not just, it's gone so far beyond the monthly magazine now. It's really about the community. It's really about, all that we do to further the world of drumming, through education, inspiration, through behind the scenes, through experiences, meeting drummers, and just really being the place where all drumming kind of passes through. We're like at the epicenter of the drumming highway.
Again, anyone that's into music or musicians, my goodness, follow David and his life on social media. You'll see him with who's who of all faces and facets of music. David's right there. And is it primarily, and maybe I'm making a false assumption, is it primarily through Modern Drummer that I see you all over the world at different stadiums and different concerts and venues and studios? Are you there interviewing or interacting with artists, or could it be frankly from any of your business facets?
No, it's from any of them. It's not just one.
That's interesting. You talk about the community of Modern Drummer. Is there anything that particularly is exciting for you when you look ahead, this year, next year, like what's ahead for that community where you're expanding into?
Oh yeah, we got some great stuff. Be on the lookout for it. We're gonna bring back some really iconic offerings that Modern Drummers had in the past that have been paused for a while. We're gonna have some new products that are coming out that are really, really exciting. We just were presenting sponsor at the Music City Drum Show in Nashville, which is a 2-day drum show over a weekend, Saturday and Sunday in July, with 200 booths and thousands of attendees. And we had signings with Godsmack's Shannon Larkin. We had signings with Greg Bissonette, who's Ringo's drummer and was in David Lee Roth's band with Steve Vai and Billy Sheehan, and is an iconic session drummer. And we had signings with Korn's Ray Luzier. The signings were like around the block of the show the whole time that they were on. So
It was all branded Modern Drummers event and
signing,
signing.
yeah,
Oh,
at
wow.
our booth, and it was just awesome because it really excited the community. Like it just became the place where everybody congregated and people could meet their hero and talk shop and meet other heroes. You were there to get Shannon Larkin's signature, but then the drummer from Luke Combs is standing there, or the drummer from Shania Twain, or whatever. And it was just a great energy of iconic and awesome musicians. And that's really, that's what Modern Drummer does. It brings everybody together, and we learn and we share and we get excited and motivated, and then we kind of dig in and go further ourselves, because now we see somebody that we learn something from, or has a different approach, or might be more successful or might be less successful, and you learn and you go, oh well, why are they less successful? Because they've done these other things. Why aren't they here? And, oh, because they did that. All right, I'm going to make a better choice than that, or I'm going to learn something that they didn't. And you see people more successful and you say, wow, how did they get that far? And then you learn that skill set. You say, oh, well, they had a certain amount of sacrifice that, I want to apply to my career. Oh, they had a certain teacher that I'm going to seek out and I'm going to learn from, and all these things that just make everything better.
No. When you became involved in the magazine in 19, you acquired it in 20.
Mhm.
From that time to the present, been one of the biggest surprises that you've learned taking on that responsibility? Biggest, awakening, surprises, however you want to position it.
The overarching, um, you know, lesson, which is, there's always so much more to learn and to improve. No matter how good we are at anything, no matter how established the brand is, there's so much more to go. So, every day is day one. And in the media business, that's more true than, every business that I think applies to. But the media business really tests you for that, um, because you have to be so nimble and so dialed in. And when Modern Drummer produced its monthly issue for decades without anything to do with me, my involvement, they had very long lead times because in the 70s and 80s and even 90s, magazines had all kinds of time frames and runways for when you created the content, when they would have to get printed, how long it took to mail, and so the runways were very, very long. But the subject matter, for the most part, was was it kind of worked that it would have that long a runway because it wasn't like the super timely story. It was a story about what a drummer was doing, and if he was doing it in April, he was probably still doing it in July. So it didn't really have a negative impact. But as time went on, and the amount of projects that a drummer would work on and the way that a drummer would share their life and their projects with people really shrunk in time. So one of the things that I really focused on with modern drummers, I cut our months of lead time that I inherited, because that was the workflow when I became publisher, to literally days and weeks.
Mm.
So there's nothing's measured in months anymore. It's all, they were measuring in months and years. I always typically measure in seconds and minutes. So like
Yeah.
talk about an extreme. So we kind of met where, it's
So you
it's
did
it's
find a
still
middle ground.
I found a little more of a middle ground than usual, but it was a
Yeah.
little bit of a middle ground, but it was far away from where the magazine had ever been. And so now we measure in days and weeks. But you know me, so it's probably more like hours and days is what my
Yeah.
team would tell you. But it has to
Well,
be. It's not just based on how I work and how I want to approach things. Even though as CEO, I have the ability to really impose my will of how we're gonna do things and try to find like-minded people to do them with me and on behalf of the community. But I just think that's what it needs.
yeah.
Besides my preference, I just really think that serving the business of that is such that you have to be real time, and
We live in
so
a
it's very,
digital
very different.
age. Yeah, in this digital age and the attention span and just the competition, I can't imagine if speed isn't on your side that you're set up to succeed. So that
No,
sounds like
not
that was
not in
a
the media business.
yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. I want to rapid fire. I'm mindful of time. I want to get to a couple of quick topics. And I think I know that you're tuned into these topics. I'm just curious to get your take. We'll go first to AI, and how is AI impacting, I'll say the music business. And I'm gonna
Huge.
imagine it's like most things in life. There's positives and there's negatives. And so I'll lob that softball. What's going on in the music business as it relates to AI, and where are your thoughts at?
Well, I mean, AI is the subject of all subjects. I mean, what can you say about it? It's every single thing you do, it is involved in. So the music business is hugely impacted by AI on every front. How music is made, how music is distributed, how music is technologically captured, how music is copied. I mean, it's everything. I mean,
Is it more
every
of a threat or more of an opportunity?
both. You really have to it has to be worked out, how these models are going to scrape IP and still compensate creators. And then on the other side, that's the threat side. And then on the other side, the opportunity side's endless. I mean, what AI can do and how you can I mean, we almost have to catch up to AI right now. I mean, it's like I always would say in every business I've ever done, just add ideas, because to me that was always the brilliance of contribution. Is what idea did you have, and then how did you manifest that idea, and how did you bring it to tangible reality so it actually made a difference? And now with
Right.
AI, we've just shrunk, idea to implementation
I,
tremendously.
AI will write you some song lyrics. I don't know if they'll be any good, but it's certainly
It goes beyond that, Ron. Someone played me a demo of a song the other day with the vocal on it and a rap in the middle of the song, and it sounded to most ears like it was done. It was like a finished song. It was a demo, but it sounded so good that for most people, they would have thought that it wasn't a demo. It was the song like that's going to go up on Spotify and people are going to start streaming. But my point is, I kind of smirked when I heard it because I knew it was they were AI singers and rappers, but they didn't tell me that. And I just said, look, that sounds really, really good, but those are not that's not an artist singing, a real person and a real person rapping. And they went, no, it's AI. But man, it sounded so convincing that most people would have never picked up that those were AI performers. So that's right now. And as we film this in the middle of 2025, this is early, early days.
Early innings. So what are you doing? What have you done, and what are you doing to raise the bar of your knowledge, your experience? Like,
Oh,
so many
I'm
listening
diving
here.
in.
How
I'm
are you
diving in.
diving in? Share at least a couple of things you're doing that people
Well,
listening might go, "That's a good idea. I'm gonna start doing what David's doing."
I'm learning a ton about it, and through, you know, just going out, taking courses, and listening to really, really smart people who I collaborate with and what they're doing with it and how they're implementing it. And I'm also on the service provider side. I'm doing because my music technology consulting business has always been consistent, and what I'm consulting on changes as the music tech needs change. And
Right.
AI is something that I'm working with some cutting edge companies to consult with, and taking what they've created on their side of their IP and bringing my years of learning, innovation, uh, and exploration uh, to speed up, how we optimize the tool. Because when you have a tool in hand, it's not just the functionality, it's as much the form and the experience. Again, back to emotion. Like you take a Crestron touch panel, if we're speaking to the integration world right now, you have a Crestron touch panel, you have thousands of variations of colors, backgrounds, images, button types, fonts. I mean, it's endless how you can configure it, but a lot of the buttons can be configured so that you press them and they do a function and it works fine, right? Lights on, lights off. Okay, I press it, it works. But there are some approaches you could take to lights on, lights off that the person would actually want to use it. Like an Apple interface is a great example. Virtually the entire strength of how they've built their multi-trillion-dollar company is that the at the most basic level, the products work, and they're fun to use. They're
Mhm.
exciting to use. They don't feel like computers. And when you look at early days of tech, the functionality in many ways was similar to what could be done later, but it was presented so dry and so computer geek like that it had zero appeal as far as wanting to keep using it. You just did
Yeah.
whatever you had to do functionally and then you got off of it because it was work to do it. Then you take a really awesome user interface and experience and you apply that to the same functionality, and now you never want to leave the experience. So I'm able to see those different sides of it, from very, very deep level tech to the emotion of how that experience unfolds. And so I'm consulting with certain AI companies on how to converge all of that and speed up what they're doing, because the brainiac side of it is not struggling, but what to do with it so it's an actual product that people want to use every day and consume and create more with. That's something that could use a lot of improvement.
What do you think the world looks like the next 3 to 5 years? I'm gonna step out of music. I'm just talking about society.
Man, it's connected is an understatement. I mean, I think we're going to see just the whole way that we interact with tech. Um, Things are about to get a lot easier and a lot more powerful fast. And, it's tech has always been something that cuts middle people out, right? The middle of anything is kind of cut out by tech because it bookends, a need and a process very, very efficiently. And we're about to see that a lot sooner than 3 to 5 years. I mean, someone described Chat GPT as, the smartest assistant you'll ever hire. And so when you take that and you get to the point where, you can book a hotel room. I mean, we thought technology peaked with, Amazon one click, and Expedia, where, oh wow, I don't have to leave the app and I can book a hotel and a flight, and I can bundle it all together and I can get some tickets to the amusement park while I'm at it. Like, these were all incredible efficiencies that had great impact. We're about to see that evolve so powerfully and so dramatically that, to forget 3 to 5 years, 1 to 2 years from now, we're going to look back and we're going to think Googling something and wrapping things up into an app was the dark ages.
Do you see any for society? And then I'm going to keep that range 3 to 5 years. Do you see any negative or challenges for society from AI, resulting from AI?
Well, of course. I mean, on so many levels, but just the fact we have to get off of our devices and into the real world more often. The devices are incredible. They're great tools. They're incredibly powerful and useful and needed, quite frankly, because once we
Mhm.
have them, we really don't want to live without them. And I don't see why we should have to. But I'm seeing an extreme use case all the time, especially as the younger people are coming up, getting older, and growing up only knowing this. Where we thought video games, were really, we had to be careful. Like, oh, all my child does is play video games all day long. Like, that's like the least of our worries compared to what we're seeing now, where, this always on world, and AI's speeding it up, is really, we have to be careful. We have to really be careful because it's going to impact people's social skills, people's empathy, people's understanding of compassion and just dealing with people. So many things that you have to interact with people, get to know them, and not just know them from some great sizzle reel that you see on social media.
All right, I'm going to ask. This is going to be my last question for you, David, or last subject. I'm going to try to get you out of here right on time. I know your
We
guest
have
there.
3 minutes.
The work that you need to do is waiting. Um, you're one of the few guests I could go to this subject that I think would be comfortable with it, and that is, I want to get your take on Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and NFTs. I know you've done a lot of work in this regard. I'm going to ask
Yeah,
you a high level question. What changes in society at a high level, broad, like, does this matter or does this not matter? I'm gonna make an assumption. Some listening to this have heard about it on the periphery, but it really hasn't entered their life yet. What's your
yeah.
take?
Well, it matters. I think it's going to grow. I think it's going to evolve. I think it's going to come back. NFTs, I'm not so sure of, at least in the form they were previously. And you're right, I've done a lot in that space and been involved in it and watched it grow and watched it crash, and watched it normalize. And I think, though, that the blockchain is really the key to what all of this is about. That's really the key to it, because the blockchain is what gives us these digital keys, really keys, that allow content creators to control and monetize what they what they create, their assets, and that's really huge. You think about creating a piece of content and it just kind of goes out into the wild west, and the blockchain allows us to track that to the point where we can monetize and legalize and control where that content is, who owns it, what's it worth, how's it trading, who's it trading to. That has really, really vast
It's gonna be a
possibilities.
big deal, is it not, for the music business, for the
Huge.
movie business,
Yes.
the ability for
Huge.
that every instance
And
and use and
TV.
deployment and
And
TV?
TV. Huge. Absolutely. It's so massive, Ron. And it's such a great point that you're bringing up. Like, that's a whole subject in and of itself. We could
Yeah.
spend hours and only be at the periphery of some of the segment, specifically movies, television, music. So we'll call it, recorded entertainment. uh that's just it's going to the blockchain is a huge part of it,
It's going to
and we haven't
solve
even scratched the surface.
it potentially, theoretically solves a lot of the pain and misery that Napster created 25 years ago
Yeah, the
when all of
piracy.
this piracy, all this content went onto the internet. Blockchain technology, NFT technology applied to those media content in this new frontier, once UX is improved and, the technology is ubiquitous, it seems to me it's an opportunity for artists to in fact be compensated for the consumption of their creativity in a way that's really hard today without that tech.
That's right. And it's the artist, and it's also the channels, right? Because it doesn't do anybody any good when someone steals a Disney show, or it's monetized at a fraction of what it's really doing out in the market in terms of performance. Yes, the writer and the director and the producer and the actors and all the people that are residual in compensation, they don't get paid, but Disney suffers tremendously, which means they can put out fewer pieces of content, and like
Right.
everything
Everyone
trickles
suffers
down
because of that
because it's
that
stolen.
flaw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's stolen, right? Or it's not monetized optimally. It's shared, which is some cases a form of stolen, or it's not monetized optimally because, it's being given away a little too often. Not stolen, but in other words, if you can track every iteration and it's tracked through the blockchain, now you really truly are end to end, like they call DTC, right? Direct to consumer. You can now literally control that entire path, and that's really important.
I could nerd out on this subject with you for hours. I'm as a hobby 10 toes down in it as I know you are, but we won't do that to our audience. We'll
No,
we'll save that
no,
for a
and I
follow
have
up.
a collaborator waiting
I
saying,
know you
"Okay,
got a rock star waiting right there. So David, we're going to sign
good."
off. My friend, thank you for joining me on this episode. Folks that want to get directly in touch with you, where would you send them?
DavidFrangioni.com and David at moderndrummer.com. And thank you for having me today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and see you again, my friend, and to share our ideas and our experiences with everyone. So I hope you guys got something from this, and it's great to be here.
Thank you, David. Be well, my friend. Have fun.
You too. Bye, everybody.